at how beautiful you all look. If everybody wants to take a seat, we'll get started. It's gonna be hard for some of us to project our voice, so how do I sound right now to you back? That's good. We're gonna open up the microphone here and have people come up and talk to us. Last time I got to stand in front of most of you was the best. I've never felt just so trusted and loved as being asked to be at Jared's wedding. And no feeling on earth as joyous as being able to proclaim the marriage of your best friend to a woman that you know in your heart is absolutely perfect for him. And I can't talk. That's why we need you guys to come up here and just tell us about our friend. And we're gonna start with Judy. If you come up, and Noah and I will be up here, and we've got tissues and water, so come on up if you feel you've got a story to share.
I'm Judy Stolzfus, Jared's mom. What can a mother say at her son's memorial? No parent should outlive their child. Most of you here today knew the adult Jared, and I could tell you 1,000 stories about the young Jared and 1,000 reasons why I love him so much, but I would have a hard time getting through that, so I'm going to tell you 2 memories, really short and light. They're very light. And the first memory is when Jared was about 5, and we were driving in my car, and he looked over at me and he said, "Mom, if ignorance is bliss, I'm in big trouble." And he was 5. I think the trouble just got worse. But and my second memory was when Jared was about 4 on the top of the picnic table at my friend's house, and he was telling jokes. And I don't usually retain jokes to retell them, but I clearly remember one of his jokes and how he cracked up telling it. Like, 10 times I must have heard it because I loved it. And so I'm going to tell you the joke. I just met the meanest man in the world. He bought a homing pigeon and then he moved. That's for you, Courtney. Thank you for loving him, all of you. I feel that from Facebook and elsewhere, and thank you for making his life so beautiful. Okay.
I just want to say that Jared was absolutely amazing and he changed my life, and I'm so grateful for all of the time that I was able to spend with him. We tried really hard to live life to the fullest, and I think that we did a really good job, and we just had so many adventures together, and we're gonna miss him so much. He was living such a full life up until the very end. A week ago we were hiking in Glacier and it's just so unreal, but we just had such a good time together, and thank you all for coming.
Much either because it's too hard, but Jared, the first time we met him, he met the whole family. Aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and mom and stepdad, and he didn't bat an eye. And he was such a joy, and he introduced us to fun games that we'd never played fun games before, and we loved him dearly. I wish you'd had more time with him, Courtney. I know you loved him and he loved you so much. He will be missed. I should have asked Ryan if you could go.
Anyone else who has a story or anything they'd like to say? Come on up.
I'm Courtney's grandma, and she grew up in a small conservative town of Spokane, Washington, just in the mountains. And she spent a long time with us when she was growing up. Eventually, she graduated from high school, went off to Tacoma to college, and after a while, our sweet little granddaughter started bringing this young man around. Okay. Anyway, she started bringing this nice young man around. He was really friendly, but he had this name that I couldn't even pronounce. And then when I learned how to pronounce it, he would change the variation of it to something else. And Grandpa and I just could not understand this. But anyway, we kind of accepted this name thing with this young man that Courtney kept bringing around. And one weekend, Courtney's mother and I were over visiting Courtney, and this young man cooked us dinner, which was very nice of him. Like I say, he was a friendly man. And they joined this vegetable of the month or vegetable of the week, whatever it was. They had produce delivered to their house. Well, something was delivered to his house that he made soup out of. And I've been cooking for years, and I've grown a garden for years. And I have this weed in my garden that I have been fighting for years and years, and I cannot get rid of it. Well, this young man made soup out of this weed. And it was delicious soup. And another thing, speaking of weed, we were on a vacation to the ocean, and the whole family was there, and Courtney brought this young man around again, and Grandpa had just had shoulder surgery, and Jared had just had surgery and was a tad bit uncomfortable. So Grandpa was saying how much he hurt, and you know what this young man did? He decided to share his medicine with Grandpa's 82-year-old grandpa. Needless to say, Grandpa slept good that day. We didn't know him very long, but we grew to respect him, accept him, and love him very much. And he broke our heart. Our hearts are broken, but we're so glad that we had known him this short time.
My name is Glenn Olson from Haley, Idaho. And sorry, I have to read this. I'm not used to speaking in public like this. Anyhow, I am an honorary father, a very proud honorary father of Jared Stoltzfus, Jared Joe Stoltzfus. And I'm a very proud dad of my daughter, Sarah, and a very loving partner to Jared's mother, Judy. I've known Jared for most of his 30 years of life, and from his carefree costume superhero days of his earliest years in our neighborhood to the incredible man he became. I know, and I was good friends with his late father, Joe, who would be very proud of the man that Jared became. I have admired Jared's zest for life and his courage throughout his many physical challenges. May his spirit fly free forever. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Olson, and I was so very blessed to grow up right next door to Jared. It's every child's dream to have your very first best friend right next door. We would play and roam free in the beautiful mountains of Idaho and create imaginable dreams and stories right in our backyard with all of his costumes and all of our journeys. And as this life goes, there are many twists and turns and many mountains to climb. And he climbed them so strongly and so beautifully. And just last year, I was so honored to be there for your wedding, Courtney and Jared. And to capture every moment and every second of that pure joy. And how much love you two had between each other is forever priceless and forever endless. To stand before you and see all of you, I believe that we all have a piece of Jared with us. He touched each of our lives, and I truly believed he has changed the world. He is one of a kind, and one of the most unique people I've ever met. And I truly am so honored, because I always considered him my brother. And he will always be my brother. And Judy, you're an amazing mother, and you let him soar free, and he touched so many lives. And Courtney, you brought so much joy and so much love to his life, and we are forever grateful for that. And I feel that life is like a dance, and we are all dancers in this life. And Jared had the best dance moves I've ever seen. And I feel like he had the best. So, as we all embrace each other in this life, let's dance together, and we know we will never forget Jared. And I love you, Jared Bear, forever and always.
Anyone else who'd like to come up and tell us about that first awkward meeting?
Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I was one of Jared's professors at University of Puget Sound. That's how he came into my life, but we've remained in touch since. I was at his wedding last summer, along with all or most of you, and remember it as being a really beautiful day. What I wanted to share with you doesn't come from the classroom. It comes from the years after. you all know that Jared had his share of surgeries in his life, and my daughter has as well. She's 11, and in fact, just last week, I got home from living in a hospital for 2 months with her in Portland. And Jared and Courtney visited us just a few weeks ago in the hospital. It was really kind. They drove a far way. And they brought a present for my daughter. He remembered what it was like to wake up in the night in a hospital and be the only one awake and want to do something. And so he found this handheld puzzle that was really hard to do. He stood in a toy store for a long time, he told us, trying them all. And he bought the one he couldn't solve. And then my daughter solved it pretty quick. But he was a very good sport about that. I guess I just wanted to let you know that his heart extended so far. I mean, he didn't know my daughter well, but he once wrote her a story about what it felt like to be different from other kids, and he sent her a rock to keep in her pocket to touch whenever she felt that, so that she would know that she was going to grow up to be someone like him. Somebody who was made stronger through those experiences. So, this was Jared. His heart was so big it extended to a young girl he had only met a handful of times. I will never forget him. And there's nothing I wouldn't have done for Jared. Nothing. So, Judy and Courtney, I say to you, anything you ever want or need that I can help you with, I'm there for you as an extension of that feeling I've long held for Jared. I love you guys, and I will always love Jared. Thank you.
A lot of my memories of Jared, like many of us, are around playing games and eating good food and drinking bad wine. And after 20 years of friendship with Courtney, we have a lot in common, and especially our sense of humor and our penchant for the absurd. And that's the same sense of humor that Jared had. And that's how I knew that they were really good for each other, and why I loved him, and why I will miss him.
Hi, I'm Julia. I was Jared's manager at Comcast, and I want to tell a story. Jared was a surprising, always very surprising individual, and Evan said, tech writers have a sort of way of being. They're generally very unassuming, quiet people, but it wasn't within like a couple weeks of hiring Jared that I realized how shocking and fun he was. So it was probably a couple weeks after he started on his first day, and there was of course some sort of lots of political chaos going on, and there was a protest at Westlake Center where the tech workers were protesting. And so I sort of went into the office and kind of offhandedly said, if anybody wants to join me today, I'll be out in the middle of the day protesting. And Jared immediately looked up and said, I love a good protest. Okay. So he and I actually ended up being just the only ones that went. So we trekked over to Westlake Center, and we're kind of standing around there. There's, awkward tech workers kind of looking at the ground, not sure what to do. And this woman comes up to kind of the front of us, and she says, does anybody want to run the megaphone? And Jared just says, yeah, I'll do it. And I sort of looked at him like, and then I was sort of weirded out. I'm like, I hope he's not doing this to like impress his new boss. Or something. So I was like, you really don't have to. And he's like, no worries. I got it. No problem. I'm like, I was thinking, I'm worried. Like I wouldn't want to do that. So within minutes or whatever, the lady instructs someone how to use the megaphone, and then he goes up on top of this gigantic podium in front of hundreds of these tech workers and starts doing the chant. And I just was sort of just like amazed, like, wow, this guy's really not what I thought. Like, and then one coworker leans towards me and says, "Who's that guy? And how do you know him?" I'm like, "Well, actually, he's our new writer." And then he sort of looked at me and he's like, "Oh, cool." That's my story. I just want to say that everyone loved Jared. He made just so many friends so quickly. People loved coming and talking to him. He was really important to the dynamic of the team, and it's just never going to be the same. So I miss him already.
So, I'm James. I met Jared my second year of college when the two departments we were working in for work study were merged, and the boss just came in and said, get along, guys. This is going to be your coworker. You're stuck with him. You don't kill each other, and stay safe out there. I've been trying to think of what I can say if there was like a single episode about Jared that sums up my experience with him. And what I really remember is a lot of little things. I remember going over one day and him saying, "Hey, me and my housemates are getting some bees. Do you want to join in?" Or him saying, "I'm going to go do stand-up comedy at the basement of the pizza place at college. You should come listen." Or here's a book, or here's a music. And the funny thing is, you always couldn't really tell if he was messing with you. Like, he would introduce me to like some of my favorite bands, and then also play. He would deadpan face, just utterly convinced that a Beatles cover band with Barnyard Animals was the best, and you could not dissuade him. You're just like, "Jared, this can't," and no, he. and so I think the thing that strikes me about all of that is he was generous. He no matter what he was doing, he would invite you to come along, whether it's hiking or playing games or listening to weird music, or even just letting me sit on his couch and play Zelda. And so, yeah, I don't know what else to say other than I'm really grateful that I got to know him, and that if I could say something to him, I'd just say thank you. Thank you for being my friend. And I'm gonna miss you.
Jared and I met, I think, when we were 13 or 14 at the beginning of high school in Haley, Idaho. And much like many of you, I knew from the second that I saw his handwriting that he was a different guy. And I was sitting here today looking back on memories from high school and all the happy times from that period of my life, and there's almost no memory that Jared wasn't a part of and Jared wasn't there for. And when I went away to college at the University of Puget Sound my freshman year, Jared got sick of me not getting on AIM anymore to talk to him, and so he decided that he also would come to school in Tacoma as well. And so I had the very unique experience with him, as well as a couple of these guys here, going to high school and college together. And in college we also had some really great adventures. My friend Kate and I were reminiscing earlier that we used to go places with Jared, and Jared would suddenly just disappear at parties or gatherings. We're like, where'd Jared go? And he would just be off making friends and having great conversations with everyone, every person there. You never had to worry that Jared wouldn't have a great time and make new friends. He was better at that than just about anybody else that I've ever met. And I'm sad that I saw him less over the last few years, but even my very last memory of seeing him is just so full of joy. He came to visit me when I first moved up to Seattle from Tacoma, and we had a really great lunch, and he told me about a novel that he was writing, and he was on his bike, and he was very, very happy. And yeah, too many happy memories.
If anyone else has anything they'd like to share, don't be shy.
Hi, my name's Mark. Somehow I knew Jared for about the past 7 years, but know so few of you, and that's my fault. Someone said something about awkward first meetings. It's no lie to say that the first time I met Jared, we got in a fight. He came over to my place with another friend, and we were on the roof of my building, and I was talking to him all about the guiding principle of my life at the time, which was existential philosophy. And the TLDR version of existential philosophy is existence precedes essence. What you do is what matters. You want to be a good person, act good. And Jared looked at me and gave that smile he had and that little giggle he would always do and said, "That's bullshit." And the reason why it was bullshit for Jared is because to Jared, people have innate value. You don't need to do something, you don't need to act to be important. And everybody was important to Jared. The last couple of conversations I had with Jared, in fact the last one, was I asked him, I said, "How's Courtney? And how's your heart?" And he said, "Courtney's great." And he said, "My heart's fine." And Jared, bullshit. Your heart wasn't fine. It was perfect.
I met Jared in college, although we didn't really become friends until after graduation, and then also roommates for a couple of years. We had this ritzy apartment in First Hill. We were trying real hard to be Seattleites, you know? It was great. We could walk everywhere, and so that's sort of what I remember the most about those years when I lived with Jared. we'd walk to get dinner, we'd walk to the grocery store, we'd walk to go get drunk, and then we'd stumble back home. And I remember, because I'm shorter than he is, he'd have this way of sort of leaning in when I was and he'd just go, and then before he responded, he'd lean back like this. And say, yeah! That was Jared. He was the way he would sort of hum absent-mindedly when he was by himself doing something. He's the way he'd always have something clever to say to cheer you up, that would always cheer you up. He's the waves that he created he's the waves of emotions he created in all of his family and friends. He's the things he put down on paper. He's the pictures he took. He's this little clay bowl that he made that he gave to me that I still use, you know. And I say all that to say this. You live as long as the last person who remembers you. And in that small way, at least, I know Jared will live as long as I do.
Most of us remember Jared making us laugh and having this magnanimous, flowing personality. And one of the ways that we hung out quite a bit was through cooking. And in this way, his complexity came through as he measured each ingredient so specifically, in the same way that Courtney does when we first started cooking together. And when I would house sit for them, he left a special note on how many grams of coffee beans to grind to make the best press, and it would always make me smile reading that each time. I still hold it in my head. Jared meant a lot to all of us, and it's so great to see you all here today. Thank you.
I really love hearing these stories. If anybody else has anything they'd like to share.
My name is John, and I worked with Jared for 3 years at Cornish College of the Arts, and he was about as good of a coworker as anybody could ever ask for. He was funny. He'd have your back and when the going gets tough. Talked about music. We shared a love for cycling. And he would always encourage me to just go out there and just live life to its fullest. And I know that I will carry that on with me. He liked the GoPro videos that I post on social media. And just tell me go out there and do it. And he was a role model and a friend, and I will miss him. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison, and I was also fortunate enough to have Jared first in my classes at the University of Puget Sound, but I like to think that our friendship developed so much beyond that. His intellect was incredible, and when I first met him, part of what we shared was an affinity for this sort of perverse Calvinism and a kind of intellectual fascination with it. And at that time, I had lost my husband not long before that, and Jared had lost his father. And I think both of us bonded over trying to think our way out of pain and out of loss. And I have so many emails. Thank God I never delete emails. All of my former students in this crowd should be a little alarmed. Of existential thoughts and trying to think through why terrible things happen and why it hurts so much to love people and to lose them. And he had a sincerity and a beauty and a grace of spirit that was so healing to me. At a time when I was supposed to be his teacher, I felt as though he taught me far more than I could ever have taught him. And the memory part is that part of our fascination with these dour Calvinists involved a trip to the Mars Hill Church, which was a charismatic sort of reinvention of Calvinism. And the thing that was memorable about it was that we both went sort of intensely skeptical, right? We're contemporary agnostics. We're not going to get sucked into this. And somewhere between the kind of Pearl Jam meets Jesus rock music and the video tech, the sincerity of the belief of the people around us made both of us incredibly sentimental. And I thought, this is a really beautiful spirit, someone who knows the limits of what it means to try to think about how to feel. And I remember I asked him, after I found out he and Courtney were getting married, I asked him about that sort of the existential crises at midnight that we had once discussed. And he said that love has a way of making them matter less. And I thought that was beautiful, and you're beautiful, and it made me so happy to see that he had found that.
If anyone else is feeling that story inside, or even just that little tidbit conversation you'll never forget,
I'm Colin. I met Jared 10 years ago at UPS, but the first time I really hung out with him was hiking up a mountain to a cabin with, I don't know, a dozen or so other people, most of whom were here. And we got kind of spread out all along the mountain, and I was mostly with Jared going all the way up. And the thing that I love about Jared is that he would always be so generous, and he would always show you something new every time you hung out with him. And that first time I spent time with him on the mountain was when I learned that. We just spent the whole time talking about books that I'd never read and bands that I'd never listened to, going all the way up. Just fascinating to much taller than me, much longer legs, and I was just trying to keep up as he went up the mountain. And we got up there, and we were one of the first people up to the cabin, and he produced this bottle of liquor that I'd never seen before, poured me out a shot, and it was pretty good. And then after 5 minutes or so, he was like, well, I guess we should go help the people who are still at the mountain. He scampered back down and picked up 2 more backpacks and went all the way back up. And that was Jared. I knew at that point, I like this guy.
Hi, my name is George. I worked with Jared for about a year or two, and we played board games almost every week together, and he's a fantastic person. But we did disagree about a lot of things about life, the universe, and everything. But after one particular lengthy Facebook argument that nobody remembers anymore, we had lunch at work together, and he brought me this book, and he didn't say much about it. But on the inside, his characteristic handwriting, he wrote this little inscription. Dear George, I'm sorry I called you a troll on the internet. Here's a book you won't like. Love, Jared. The book is about life, the universe, and everything. And true to form, I didn't actually like the book. But then I noticed there was another page that had a little inscription to it. P.S. P.S. I'm agnostic, so don't think of this book as an attempt to convert you into a weird Jesus cult or whatever. It didn't. And then, after another couple pages, there was a third inscription. P.P.S. If you did convert to a weird Jesus cult after reading this, I would consider that a good result. He had that love for absurd humor, and I'm keeping this book and these inscriptions forever. So, thanks for Jared.
Who here has not argued with Jared?
There's a lot more people when you turn this way. My name is Matthew, and I met Jared a couple years ago through my now fiance. Actually going up the mountain Colin was talking about. I'm very grateful for the little place in my heart that Jared made for himself. Helped me learn how to meet new people and connect with them. One of the things that I really loved about Jared was when I first met him, when I was meeting all these new people, he would constantly, he would look at me and then he would say, "Would you rather?" And initially I thought this was just sort of, he had a very specific "would you rather" that he always wanted to know how people would respond, but over time I learned that he just liked to know how people thought, and he just liked to understand people. Pretty quickly I also learned that whatever it was that I said, he had a correct answer. It's like, that's the wrong answer, Matt. Or, yes, you got it, that's right. Since I learned that he won't be around anymore to ask me those questions, I found that I'm very disappointed because I loved the way that he thought, and I loved the way that he was curious about me. And I'll miss that.
Even if you think your story is not so good, I promise you will love it. Sorry to lead with that right before you came up.
Made me come up with it. I'm Liz. I also went to UPS. I didn't know Jared during school very much. And then I got to know him more after college. I am the fiance that Matt was referring to. And kind of related to Matt. I had a boyfriend before that Jared also knew. And I remember I had broken up with him and I was feeling very sad. And we were all sitting around and Jared goes, "Well, that's okay, it was boring." And that was like, yep, that's Jared. But then also Jared years later, it got brought up and he apologized. And then I started bringing Matt around, and every time Matt wasn't there, Jared wanted to know where Matt was. Every time, where's Matt? And I think he's the person that's asked the both of us the most questions about our dissertations. And I think he'd probably be the main person who would actually show up at our defenses. And I think to have Jared's excitement over who I had chosen was probably like the biggest honor. Not only because I knew that he was discriminating against my other partners, but I just think that was the biggest honor. And I just feel so honored to have shared time on this earth with Jared, and I'm gonna miss him very much.
God, I'm gonna miss him too. If anyone else has anything they'd like to share, you don't have to hug the big intimidating men up here if you don't want to.
Hi, my name's Tom. I didn't really know Jared very well, and the adult Jared I knew actually only through the internet. I think the last time I saw him face to face, he didn't have a driver's license yet. Judy, it's been forever. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I see you, and the reason why. But the first time I met Jared was at a mountain unicycling festival that I had shown up in. For people that only know Jared from Seattle, I don't know if he really rode here, or if you know just how good a unicyclist he was. He had an amazing skill at that. But I went to this festival and met Jared along with his mom and dad, and they took me into their campsite. And that sort of started my relationship with him. I think he was 13 or 14. And I had a very small son at that point, so he was older. I was trying to, kind of get a sense for what was down the road for me. And one day he sprained his ankle, and so he was icing it in the back of the family truck, and I couldn't ride for anything, so I looked at that as an excuse to not ride, and I hopped in with Jared. And he was reading a book. I can't remember what it was, but it was a really difficult book, and it's one that I had read, but I had read it when I was like 25, and he's plowing his way through it at 14. And so we started talking about different authors that we liked in science fiction and Heinlein, and whether, his utopian view of what humans could become if only they're given enough time was, bullshit or not. And just had this really fascinating discussion with him. And what came across was just this intellect, which a few people have mentioned, and how smart he was. And in a lot of kids, you would say, oh, that kid's precocious. But when I think of precociousness, I think of a kid who's trying to come across as smart. And with Jared, that wasn't the case. He just, he couldn't help it. And I think he had the good fortune of being raised by people that taught him it was more important to speak his mind than to mind his manners. And that's sort of, I think, from what I've heard, kind of how he evolved as an adult as well. And just a very quick adult Jared story. The thing that impressed me too was how the level of his intellectual curiosity, and that it could extend to literally any subject. He apparently wanted to buy a Hawaiian shirt, and so he started a post on Facebook. Hey, what are some elements of a good Hawaiian shirt? I had some experience on the topic, so I jumped on the thread. And one of the things I said was, well, a really nice one, the pocket material will match, it'll be matched to the shirt underneath it. And Jared just did not believe that that was a thing. He demanded photographic evidence that such a thing could exist. So, I sent him a picture of this shirt, and he conceded and then had everything he needed to know to go buy a Hawaiian shirt. So I would apply that to literally any topic. And even though I never knew him really face to face as an adult, he was, just such a spectacular person. And I think the planet needed him for a whole lot longer than we got him.
I'm Jason. I think all of us know Jared's intelligence was beyond bounds, but his emotional intelligence was as well. I don't know why I'm thinking of this one, but we were taking a flight down to California together for Hillary and Noah's wedding, and just a normal trip. We took the light rail down to SeaTac. We got on our plane. I fell asleep at the beginning of the flight like I normally do. We go through the flight and talk throughout all of it. We land, turn back on our cell phones and get reception. And I get a bunch of Facebook notifications. And Jared had, while we had boarded, it was an early flight and I'd fallen asleep. And Jared decided to take the moment to take a selfie with me with my mouth entirely open. And if I had any dental fillings or anything like that, you'd be able to see the entirety of it through this selfie. And I was kind of angry that he had posted on Facebook. But over the next day or so, I started getting that, no, that was a good joke. That was a good joke. And I really appreciate that throughout all of the things that Jared did with people and all of his interactions, he knew how to push people. And push people he did. But he only pushed them as far as they could go. His attunement to other people was so strong, and I will miss him.
Hi, I'm Suzanne. I was one of Jared's professors at University of Puget Sound. My first year there, I was fresh out of grad school, very nervous, convinced nobody knew, and he was my student. And he, well, there's a lot to say. One is that he was a wonderfully talented, a really beautiful writer. He was my student in fiction. And this morning I spent combing through my files. I was hoping I had one of his stories I could share a little bit of, but I didn't have it. So I've got a couple drawers full of old student work in my office, so I'll have to comb through that and see if any of his stories are there. I wasn't fully aware of Jared's health issues. I saw, he had a lot of scars, and I'd asked one of my colleagues, so I knew he'd struggled with some stuff. And I think that kind of experience, it can make some young people, it can kind of curdle them. For him, I feel like it made him so sweet, and just this kind of depth of feeling. It came out in his work, in his dealings with everyone and with me. And I was his professor, but I don't think he ever didn't think of me as a person first, and he kind of looked out for me, which wasn't his job. It's not your job at 20 to look out for your professor. But he did, and I remember there was a student who was kind of mouthy, and I didn't quite get what was going on, but he sort of spoke sharply to her and said, you know, you're being disrespectful. And it wasn't his job to protect me, but it was just such a lovely, generous thing to do. And I feel so lucky to have known him. I think we all are. And that's it. Thanks.
Classes with Jared were the best, but you knew you weren't going to be the best student in that class. We're going to get a couple more stories here.
So my name is Ellie, and like many of you, I knew Jared in school a little bit, but then really got to know him a little bit better after college. I knew that he had been doing photographs of ceilings and floors and taking those kind of pictures. And at some point, oh my goodness. Oh no. At some point, I got a notification on Facebook that said, you know, this day several years ago, and it showed a picture of a ceiling, and I was like, oh, Jared's must be yours. And he was like, no, it's not, you took this. And I was like, no, it looks just like the ones from your navel gaze. Are you sure it's not from like the pictures you did? And I think he must have enjoyed the absurdity of arguing with someone on the internet, trying to convince them that he did not in fact take a picture, like convincing a person that the picture they took was in fact the picture they took. And ultimately I did realize it, but I realized the memory that generated that, like where it had come from. We traveled to Iceland, several of us, New Jared, a couple of us who are here today. And I remember looking up in this old, like 1,000-year-old cathedral or something and thinking, you know, Jared would really like this picture. And so I took a picture and I tagged him in it and unwittingly started the whole chain years later. But all this to say that, you know, I think in all he did, he had this vision, and he could really appreciate the things that he saw in other people, and he made them see those things in themselves. And he was a really amazing person, and we're going to miss him a lot.
Exhausting amount of emotion, even for the planes. Thank God for people who know how to get things done, though.
Hi, I'm Irene, and like a lot of people here, I met Jarrett in Puget Sound, and I've thought a lot in the last few days about what kind of memories I could share of him, because he was such a unique person, and I think there are a lot of different aspects to who he was. But when I think about like how I'm going to remember him, the year after college, my dog, who I had raised from when she was a puppy, and had had her for 6 years, and I was her like favorite person in the world, even though I'd been in and out throughout college. She came to live with me the year after we graduated, and really quickly, within like 2 weeks, she liked Jared so much more than she liked me. And so I think when I think about him, I'll remember him as a person that was so like loving and attentive and giving to people, that my 6 years of history with my dog was wiped out in 2 weeks, and she loved Jared way more than she loved me. So I'll remember him that way.
Hi, I'm Jacob. One of my first memories of Jared, I met him, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, and one of the first things after he knew I rode bikes, and so he said, "Oh, you ride bikes? I ride mountain unicycles," and I thought, oh, okay, this is gonna be, I don't know how this is gonna go, and within about 30 seconds, that all evaporated, and this guy's pretty awesome. And then the next thing, it was one of the same meetings, or same conversations, and he just latched onto this idea, kept repeating, "I am the allegorical everyman." And I looked at it and I was like, how? Okay, I mean, I get it, but I don't how. And he's like, "I'm the allegorical everyman." And he kept it going. I can't remember if that was at a bar or a house party and then I remembered that actually he kept it going for several other meetings. I'm sure a few people here do remember him going on with that for a long, long time. Still trying to exactly figure out what he meant by that, but it doesn't matter. It's that the way he said it is what I really remember. Me and my girlfriend Jess were at their house on Saturday. We were watching their dogs and found out Sunday morning. And you really get to know somebody by being in their house. And Courtney, your walls are just a story of you guys, and we just felt really good in your house, and that's really says something about you two together. And thanks for letting us eat all the last year's stroopwafels and your dried mangoes, and this is the one of the tough parts for me is that I had recently reconnected with Jared. I mean, we talked on the internet, and but I was walking to where I work in Wedgwood, and I looked over and I was like, "Is that Jared?" And no, I'll keep going. No way he'd be up here in Wedgwood. And I look over and I'm like, no, it's definitely him. Saw him looking at me. I took my headphones out and just yelled over traffic across the road. I was like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he goes, "I live here." And it's like, and I don't. It's all these little snippets, like you guys are saying, that just keep coming up, and it's just the way he was. And I was. It's hard to have made plans in your head for when somebody gets back and have to realize you're not quite going to be able to do those things the same way. I wanted to ride bikes, wanted to come over and play Twilight Snuggle, which he actually told me he gave Courtney for Valentine's Day or your birthday, and he wrote, it's a game called Twilight Struggle about the Cold War, where you reenact the entire Cold War in 10 turns, and it takes about an hour just to get set up, and he proudly said, "I got that for Courtney for Valentine's Day." I was like, just, you never knew what you're gonna get, and just to see all those things, I don't, it was good to feel like, even though you guys weren't there, we felt like we were some of your best friends for that whole week, and so that was such a gift for us to be able to watch Emily and George, and so I guess I just wanted to close. We have a saying in my family that just when somebody's far away or when you miss them, it's not that they're gone. You just have a lot of love that it's got nowhere to go, and you don't know what to do with it. So I'm just grateful to be able to know Jared.
I don't know what's going to end up coming out of my mouth because this whole thing is deeply sad and obliterates everything, like your capacity for forming sentences. And so if I go on for way too long, just like throw something at me and I'll leave. Anyway, my name's Andrew. I met Jared in 1999. He had just jumped from the 5th grade to the 6th grade, and was the very strange, very precocious, precocious is the wrong word, we've already talked about that, but he was just a strange and a very opinionated and kind of cynical boy who had a lot of feelings about everything, and it took a minute. It took us a minute, and I don't know why it took us a minute. And then once said minute passed, we were very close all the time and talked about a lot of things, and shared. And I feel like when you grow up in it, one, middle school's awful no matter what, and when you're in a small town where nobody really, where sometimes it's hard to feel like you can connect to other people, there is just something, even though I don't think we liked each other very much for at least like 3 or 4 months, then suddenly I think it was a we're in this together kind of thing. I'm not quite sure, but I think that was kind of what happened. But anyway, there was some sort of psychic barrier, and eventually it broke down, and then we were talking all the time about anything and everything and sharing everything we could get our hands on with each other, which was mostly a lot of songs and weird internet stuff. Like, not that kind of weird, but you know, I'm really... But anyway, where I'm trying to get with this is... Fuck. I told you it wasn't going to work out, but anyway, what I wanted to say is that this thing happened, and I want to say it happened around 2004 or 2005, where I feel like all of the curmudgeonly parts of Jared that I remember kind of gave way to an unceasing and all-encompassing optimism no matter fucking what. And his unrelenting positivity and his ability to empathize with people, like, no matter what the fuck was going on, no matter how bad things were, no matter how bad things were for him, for anybody, just, it felt like one day, and I don't think it actually happened overnight, but it felt like it was just this very sudden thing where he had just opened himself up to the universe in a whole new way. And I think once that happened, that never changed, and I think he was able to mean so much to some... I don't fucking know. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't even have a story here. All I'm saying is that I've never met an optimist like him. And I've never been able... this isn't about me, but I'm taking up too much space. I'll just say that I'm devastated and floored, and this fucking sucks, and it's really unfair, and I've got nothing else, and I love you all, and I'm gonna miss him dearly.
Hello, my name's Matt. I'm up here, I wasn't going to do this, but then I realized that if the roles were reversed, he would be here anyways. And so it's a pretty good way to honor him, I think. It was hard to get on Jared's calendar. Now I know why. He was a busy person. So my life doesn't change a lot, and it takes a while for it to change. Jared changed my life in like the third time I met him. We were camping, and it was a trip that I have to believe was coordinated mostly by him. But on that trip was where I truly met my present-day fiance. So I'm very thankful to him for coordinating that. And speaking of getting on his calendar, I'm really sad because I was on his calendar, and I was on his calendar for next weekend, which is when my wedding is, and I'm just. I think he's gonna be there, and I just really wish I could say thanks for coming, and it's really important that you're here, and you mean a lot to us. So, I really wish that. I mean, I'm 31. He was. I actually had no idea how old he was until I looked at the program. So there are like 4 boards of pictures back there. I'm sure you guys had to like filter out like 15 other boards. I don't think I have 4 boards in 31 years. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that 29 years is not a long time. And it shouldn't feel like it's a long time, but that guy lived way longer than 29 years. And I feel like I had years with him. And if we add all our years up, it's certainly more than 29. So, terribly, terribly sorry for your loss.
I'm Maggie, and I gave a really terrible speech at Jared's wedding, and so I didn't really want to say anything, but I also didn't really want to not say anything. Sorry, whoever just spoke just got me crying, so like I was all ready. Anyway, I just, since I didn't really know what to say, and this is unscripted, so if this is a terrible idea, just shut it down. But I just thought maybe we could have like a moment of silence, because I don't know what to say.
It's a great idea.
Okay, cool. Anyway, thank you.
Hearing these stories about parts of Jared's life that I couldn't be there for means more than you guys will ever know. Or maybe you know exactly how much it means right now. I wish I could say something, but being at that wedding was the greatest thing, and this is just too hard. And I don't know much of anything, but I do know that when it comes our time to cross that cold river, Jared's gonna be waiting on that far shore for us to help us get dry and warm. It really means a lot for all of you to be here.
Thank everybody for coming. I think we're wrapping up, but there's programs and books in the back. If people want to draw a picture, write anything down, please leave a message in one of the books. Take a look at some of the photos, and we all know we're keeping Jared in our hearts. So, thank you all.